Hi, guys. Let's kick it off. Let's get right into it. And Maura, I'm wondering if you could share a brief overview of your role at Warner Chappell and maybe specifically how your A&R role work with artists and songwriters and producers, how that all works.
Yes. Also, are you guys hearing my text chime? Is that coming through?
No.
Okay, great. Because I don't know how to turn it off. Hi, I'm Mara. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I do A&R at Warner Chappell. I've been at the company for about 3.5 years now. I came from doing writer-producer management, which is similar in a lot of ways, but my role currently, I would say, to really simplify it, is kind of two main focuses. So one is acquisition, which is basically identifying new talent, not necessarily meaning that the creator is someone brand new to the scene. It could be someone who's already quite established, but new to our company. Um, but oftentimes it is someone that's brand new to the industry. So it's kind of a mix of all levels and types of artists and songwriters and producers. So yeah, the acquisition side is identifying those people, bringing them into the company, working with our legal and business affairs department on getting the agreements in place. And then once they're signed to us, it's helping them find work and opportunities and expand their network and develop their careers. And then the second side is really just kind of maintaining the existing roster that's in place, which is built over years and years and a variety of different A&Rs in different spaces. So that's kind of more service-based work. So it's just speaking daily with all of the people on our roster, whether they're songwriters, artists, producers, they're all looking to do different things at different times in their career. So it's not really ever the same for a specific person at a specific time. So some people want to get more involved with sync, in which case A&R is the bridge between that relationship. With newer artists or independent artists, we also have a department called Creative Services that acts as essentially a label services department. It's like all things marketing and branding that basically anything that doesn't fall specifically under sync or A&R. Um, and then under the A&R department specifically, like I've kind of already said, it's just a lot of setting up sessions, a lot of pitching songs, a lot of making introductions between songwriters and producers and songwriters and artists and vice versa. And of course, helping people build their teams out more if that's necessary, whether it's managers or finding a new lawyer sometimes comes up. So yeah, those are kind of the two main buckets that I am focused on in a day-to-day basis.
Cool. You touched on it briefly, and it's something that comes up a lot for me as a producer manager is the difference of doing A&R in a producer songwriter space and doing A&R at a label. And you said something specifically where you're like, A&R to me isn't always finding something that's brand new to everyone else. It could be something existing. Can you
Yeah.
speak a little bit more to the difference of A&R on what you're doing and A&R on the label side and why that's different?
Yeah. So the differences between A&R, between a label and publisher, that I guess there are some. I guess the key difference is as a publisher, we represent songwriters and producers, which record labels do not do. They only represent artists. So as a publisher, a lot of my job is helping connect songwriters with a variety of artists. It's also connecting them with other songwriters and producers and helping them create really strong pitch songs that we then have to find homes for. So there is the element of connecting them with artists that we think they could match well with and become like long-term creative partners is usually the goal. But it's also working with individual songs that aren't tied to an artist um, from their inception and helping find opportunities for songs independently that way. So, um, and then and then we also work with artists similar to as a label and that's kind of more similar because both label A&Rs and publisher A&Rs when we're working with an artist, the role is really to help that artist find their creative collective, like who's going to help them make this next album that is a specific sound and direction that they want to go because they may not be equipped to know, who the right people are to be able to get that sound with. But as a label A&R, there's a lot more that they expand on from that. So they're kind of the central hub within the label system to make sure that marketing is doing their job and digital is doing their job and there's the touring element and all of the content and the social media and like there's a lot more branding and marketing and external facing things that an A&R on the label side is involved with, whereas a publisher is pretty much solely focused on just the creation of the song and the song itself and like how do you get the best song, whether it's for an artist that's going to release it themselves or if it's a group of songwriters and producers, then it's like how do we get the best sounding song and then how do we find a home for that.
I always say from a background in artist management that I consider now what I do on the producer side, where I'm like, I think what we are tasked with is easily the most important part of the process. And it's what you just said. Like we're tasked with the most important part of an artist's career in that our clients are being asked, hey, can you make my music sound good? And
Hmm.
it's like,
Hmm.
what do we have without that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
you spoke to it a little bit, but people always talk about the music industry as a whole, but there's so many different pockets, and I'm wondering what attracted you specifically to working with producers and songwriters rather than maybe artists. I'm sure you obviously do
Yeah.
work with artists in some capacity, but what drew you specifically to this lane?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, initially I really fell into it kind of out of necessity because I had actually started as a day-to-day artist manager and my true initial love was artists and
Oh,
I
wow.
I did not have an understanding of what songwriters and producers did. It wasn't something that I had been exposed to at all. And I went through a couple jobs that were really, really difficult, like the kinds of jobs that you like cry to on the way to work. And and and
Was
I
that also was that specific to the artists you were working with, or like in the day-to-day space, or?
No, that was actually so the company that I was at, my very first job I actually loved very much. I loved everyone that I worked with, artist and staff wise, but that company ended up shutting down, and so I ended up having to take a short-term job adjacent to music that was just very challenging and at my first job, I had met a woman named Jen Knofel, who was a publisher at the time, still is, but at the time she was at Sony. Now she's at Universal, but she had published an artist that I did day-to-day management on, and I ran into her just on a whim at some event and I was in this really dark place and I was like, Jen, like I need to find a new job. Like, please let me know if you hear of anything. And I was just so desperate. And she introduced me to the guy who at the time was running the pop department at ASCAP. And I, at the time, could not have explained what the difference between a songwriter and producer was. Like I knew nothing. I have no idea why they hired me, but they hired me and that was kind of I just like had to go do a deep dive into like what does a songwriter even mean? What do they do? How do they
Figure it out, right?
work? Yeah, and I like figured it
Even
out
from
out of
Chat GPT.
necessity. Yeah. And I think it was really meant to be because I just fully fell in love with it, and I don't know that I would have ever gravitated towards that, um just out of like curiosity. I don't know that that would have happened. So yeah, that's the honest answer. But I think I fell in love with it just genuinely, and then as the industry continued to change, I also started realizing that working at a record label or working on the management side of an artist was becoming much less about the actual music and the songs and the creative, and it was becoming more and more about your social media following, and like
Yeah.
labels were assigning influencers rather than people who have actual creative talent and skill, and that really didn't speak to me. And so I think as my love for songwriters and just that process grew, and also my kind of disgust with the side of music that just feels kind of, gross and more like corporate and commercial to me. Like that was progressing. So it just kind of, I think, became clear at one point that like this is the side where I just feel like most true to myself, and also just where I'm most inspired.
I love that.
Yeah.
I had a similar start working in day to day and not knowing at all what I was doing. And I remember somebody asked me to advance the dates, and I said, "Yep." And I literally like split screen Googled like, what does that mean? You just
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you kind
Very
of touched on something that I want to elaborate on further, as you're talking about it not just being about the music, and now it's about something bigger in terms of virality and social media and impressions and followers and all of those things, and how that specifically pertains to where you're at in your career, specifically regarding who you're signing and as you're seeking potential new clients on the producer or songwriting side. I'm wondering, obviously, I want to believe that the first step is something that sounds good, but what else are you really looking for when you're looking to sign new talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that I can answer for me specifically to my specific situation now, but I think depending on who you would ask at a different company, you would probably get a very different
Totally.
answer. But one of the reasons that I love working at Warner Chappell is they're collectively like very interested and focused on culturally impactful music, and they also really understand development and that things take time, and they see the value of finding things early and getting in early, and that really aligns with my personal interest. So a lot of times for me, it's really genuinely mostly just about the music. It's like, is this something that is, really unique and really strong and stands out in a certain way and like, is there a vision and a collective understanding between the artist and their team as to how this evolves and like what the end goal is, and are the step-by-step plan like very clear. Um, and oftentimes that's enough to get me personally invested and interested. But I think speaking more generally, a lot of what an A&R would look for beyond just the music being really good is who is the person's community? Like, who do they surround themselves with? Have they spent a good amount of time investing in relationships that are going to help advance their career in different ways? And similarly, who have they chosen to be on their team? Because team members can have a huge impact in a positive or negative way. And so that's a massive thing to consider, is like, especially management is such a intense and like constant role in someone's life, whether it's an artist or songwriter, producer, and is that person like at the very bare minimum a good human and someone that's trustworthy, but also do they
That's
have
the first thing for me is
yeah,
truly that. I'm like, are you a
yeah,
good person? Are
yeah,
you
yeah,
nice?
yeah.
That's honestly, I'm looking at that before I listen to the music.
Really? Wow.
Could you
Um,
imagine having that kind of control over who you're bringing into your life? It's like there's a lot of
yeah.
talent out there, but I think it's like talent and like you just said it, good human. Who are you surrounding yourself with
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure?
yeah, exactly. And then I think, yeah, other than that, it's like, I mean, it's ideal to be able to really understand what someone's work ethic is like because I've dealt with creatives who are insanely talented, but they like over time it becomes clear they don't want to put in the time and effort that is necessary and it's sometimes hard to detect that when you don't have a lot of time, but I think I've gotten better at it just as I've had more time and experience in the industry. Um and I think a lot of kind of doing like a Yelp review on people I found is helpful. Like, like ask people that they have worked with before, like, or have known them for a good amount of time in some sort of context. Like, what is this person like in the studio? And like, what is,
Your
are
due
they,
diligence.
yeah,
At the end of
yeah,
the day, you're like you're creating a little family for yourself. So
yeah.
I appreciate the research.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to do some market research, but I think a lot of it, especially for me, is really just kind of gut instinct and um just like am I passionate enough to be able to be excited about this person for the next 6+ years because with a newer artist or songwriter that's like generally about how long it takes I think at minimum to like really start to see something happen.
Yeah.
um,
I'd love to talk a little bit more about the business side of things now. So it's like you've found what you're looking for, you've signed someone, now you're kind of in the nitty-gritty of it. I know a topic that comes up for me a lot is the difference between songwriter and a producer and how those deals are different, how setting up those sessions are different, how putting together the credits are different, the back end is different. Can you speak a little bit to that?
what do you when you say deals, do you mean like publishing deals or
I mean, just the credits kind of specifically and how you're looking at splits and how you're putting together these credits following a session, especially if it's starting to get blurry. If you've got a producer or a songwriter, or let's say a producer and a songwriter going
yeah.
into a session, how do you kind of audit those credits at the end of the session and make sure that your client is kind of being looked after?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think,
It's interesting too, because I think a lot of people forget like there's a trust policy that exists because we're usually not in the room, right? So it's like it's
yeah, yeah,
coming
yeah.
out of those sessions where your client is calling you and saying, here's how I interpreted everything went down. Here's my take on the splits.
Right,
Here's my take on everything.
right, right. I mean, it's an interesting question because I think the answer to that varies depending on what genre you're in and what city you're in. Because Nashville versus
Ooh,
LA is a little
that's a
split.
really good answer. Yeah. Can you speak to that further?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for the pop side and I guess really the pop side in LA, which is what I work in, I would say most people will look at how many people were in the original session. Like let's say it's four people, maybe one artist, one producer, and two top line writers. Um, and if the song ends up not being touched by anyone else, I think most people would say that's an even split, just 25% to each person. And I would say generally that's a pretty easy situation. And it's not people aren't really nitpicky about who did what in the room and like one person spent like X amount of more hours on something or they did edits that equated to more time spent on it. Like that's not typically something that comes up. I think where it becomes more problematic is when there are new people added on after the original session. And a lot of times that happens without all of the original creators without their knowledge. So like sometimes the producer will like bring in a friend or someone that's signed to him or her to like throw some new drums on or edit this or that, whatever it may be, publishing related or not. And oftentimes that person will come in the 11th hour and say to the group, like, hey, this person ended up working on XYZ song or XYZ thing on the song. And so now we think they deserve 4% publishing. And that's typically where problems arise more and it can get really complicated.
Yeah.
Also, like, something very typical that happens is when you're pitching an outside song to a bigger artist that isn't really a songwriter and maybe they didn't edit anything or much of anything, and then they demand equal part publishing. Um, so there's so many different scenarios that can come up, and I think generally speaking, for me personally, I'm if someone if like the group was aware that a new person was being brought in and that person is actually touching the composition side of the song, not just adding sonics that are related to the master side only, then I feel fine with that. But I think where it gets really hairy is someone who's contributing on the master side is wanting to partake in publishing, and
Yeah.
that's when I personally really will fight for my people because especially for the songwriters it's like that's they only have one income stream, and as a producer and an artist you have multiple and also like immediate money coming in. So um I'm
Well,
not sure.
how do you recommend too? Because I feel like something that comes up for me often on the production side is like, especially for people that are just kind of getting their foot in the door and they're starting off maybe as an assistant engineer or an engineer and they're just kind of getting in the room and getting their feet wet and they're in session and their role develops and maybe what started off as an assistant role can evolve into something that doesn't feel like an assistant, or maybe they start having opinions that really feel directly production related. And
Yeah,
it comes down to really advocating for yourself and making sure
yeah,
that someone is listening to you when you say, hey, I think I'm kind of doing a little bit more than what this began as. And I feel like on the
yeah,
songwriting side, it's the same thing of like making sure, I think specifically women, non-binary, that there's advocation happening. And, especially as a songwriter, when you can get so nitty gritty on those splits and something of being
yeah,
like, oh, you didn't do anything, or this is only 5% or whatever. And someone's being like, actually, I think I contributed equal, how do
yeah.
you recommend kind of approaching those situations when there's such a big discrepancy and someone feels like maybe they're not being heard for their contributions?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough question because there's not really an easy answer or like
Yeah.
a way that I've found that works seamlessly. It's like generally just a series of tough conversations that you have to have, and you just I guess have to stay persistent and be sometimes very detailed about what work your client really actually did. And then I think I guess the only other thing I'd add is you can be creative with what you're asking for, and I think everything is a negotiation and a compromise. So there's publishing, there's writer fees now, there's back end points that writers are asking for. So I think any of those asks are on the table in order to make yourself or your client feel like you're getting something in exchange for what you did, even if it's not necessarily the exact ask initially that you made. I think, it's becoming more of a norm slowly to be able to reach for some of these other
Mhm.
things as a songwriter than even like 5 years ago you
Yeah.
too. So yeah, I think it's like be creative and just I think you just have to really speak up and be persistent and
I think that's it. It's be creative, speak up, like be bold. Like one of the
yeah.
things that I've mentioned a lot over these talks that I've done with We Are Moving the Needle is don't ask, don't get. And it's like if you're in the room
Yeah.
and you feel like this is happening and you feel that your position is evolving or changing or you're contributing more than what you set out to, like you have to speak up, whether it's communicating to your publisher or whomever brought you into this session, because
Yeah.
nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah, I also think on that same point, like one thing that I really try to advise younger people coming into the industry is you have to brand, like you have to be really, really thoughtful about how you brand yourself from the get-go. Like, and I think as anyone who's contributing to production in some way who's not man is typically much more insecure. I've learned about calling themselves a producer or saying that they sometimes contribute to production in some way in a session. And I think it's a lot harder once you're known in the industry as a songwriter to transition into being known as also a producer. So I think if even if you have interest and aspirations, but maybe you're not actively in every session contributing to production in some way, I would still say like brand yourself as a songwriter producer, someone who does both. And that doesn't mean that you have to be that person in every single session, but I think you're the only person who can kind of put that into the world
Yeah.
initially and over time people will start to recognize those contributions and it'll be easier to kind of build on that initial identity, but I think it's just really hard once you're kind of known as one thing
Yeah.
to break into another area,
Yeah.
especially as a minority.
I mean, I think there's something to be said too. I feel like people always respond well to someone that's so adaptable and that can get into the room and can wear different hats and put on whatever hat is needed at that time, whether it's, oh, you need more production support, oh, you need more songwriting support. But again, I think it comes down to we're not in the room. So it's someone walking out of that session having a clear understanding of what was what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so speaking a little bit to that, I obviously I do have songwriters that I work with, but I would consider most of what I'm doing production management. Um,
Hmm.
and it comes up a lot of when the right time is for someone to seek a manager. Like what's the right time? And I'm curious what that looks like on your side in terms of publishing. Like when would you say is the right time for someone to seek a publisher?
Hmm. Or a manager, you mean?
Yeah,
Or
just like when,
or
like if
either.
someone's calling you and hitting you up, like when's the right time to do it in within their career? Is it like, you want to get in early? Is someone needing to come to the door being like, look at all these credits? Is it like having one big bomb viral song?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think my personal take on that is the creative person should let people come to them. I think oftentimes it's not a productive outcome when it's the creative person having to bang down doors
Hmm.
and kind of beg a manager to work with them or a publisher to pay attention. I think like my job as a publisher and the job of a manager like is to find great things to represent and to work with and like we are all actively looking for those things. And so I think when the time is right for someone, the right people will find them. And I think when someone's at a point at that place in their career, they also more likely will have a variety of options to choose from and leverage. And that just puts someone in a much better position and I think a much likelier success rate of having like a long-term really great partnership. So I think like I always tell people just keep your head down, grow within your peer community and it's really just about being persistent and super hungry and building your career up as much as you can by yourself and not focusing on kind of the more like external desires like a manager or publisher because I think a lot of times it's like it's just like anyone wants like the big shiny thing. They want to buy a house, they want to buy a car, and they think once they have that, it's gonna like, make things much easier and like great things are gonna happen and so on. And I don't think that's really ever the reality. It's like you're always going to be the person who cares the most about your career. And I think because of that, I just always advise to just like keep your head down and just do the work and let people come to you when the time is right.
I know one of the things that comes up often for people that are trying to get started, and you said it too, of being really hungry, is this say yes mentality of just like every session, every opportunity that comes to them, just say yes and continue to accumulate your credits. And one
Mhm.
of the things that's come up for me is kind of being in that hungry phase, letting that hungry phase go on for a year, two, three, four, whatever it is, and then kind of taking a moment to audit your credits and you're looking at it and you're like, these don't make sense. Like I said yes to everything, but now depending on like where my heart is at, whether it lives with a specific genre or specific style of music, you're looking at all this say yes over the course of several years and you've got
Mhm.
country, hip hop, all these different things. Like, do you have an opinion on that? On like if you should try and be staying within a specific genre? Like if you love pop to only be doing pop? Like, how do you kind of balance this stay hungry, say yes, but also like branding yourself in a specific space?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super important to be conscious of. I think it's really rare to be good at everything. I can't really think of someone that is killing it across the board like that. So yeah, I think it can be hard because obviously, well not obviously, but a lot of creatives it seems like all aspire to be on top 40 pop radio or like the top of the Billboard Hot 100 and that seems to be, the main focus for a lot of people, but there are so many other little pockets of music and the industry where you can have a really great career. And I've definitely encountered creatives who have had a lot of success in one genre or one space, but they just want to be like the top pop person, and so they take focus away from the thing that's working for them to try to go after something that is usually much more competitive and just much more saturated. And
Yeah.
um and I think that rarely works well. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for like just building off of what is working for you, which is likely one or two genres or spaces or things. And I think that that's not to say that you can't grow or evolve over time, but I think being focused and intentional and like very, very conscious of your brand and how you're presenting yourself to the community, is very, very important. There's also just so many people making music and I think the more specific of a brand you have as a creative, the more likely you are going to be top of mind to an artist or a A&R or when like maybe there's a sonic reference or like some sort of reference that you're associated with and you'll come to mind instead of
Yeah.
someone who's just kind of like all over the place.
Yeah. One of the pieces of advice that I've given to people when they're in that say yes stage where they just want to say yes to everything and keep busy and keep learning is when they're kind of doing that auditing process at the end and looking at all their credits and maybe making a website that to just call it like selected credits where they're able to take
Mhm.
the credits that they think is most representative of who they are, what they love, maybe the most successful ones and kind of putting those up at the top and making those the forefront.
Yeah.
It's not to say like omitting all the other ones, but just at least keeping the focus on the ones that you think are most indicative of who you are as a producer or songwriter.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's super smart. And another thing that I've done in the past with clients, because sometimes there is an opportunity that's really not sexy, but you know it's going to pay well, and so you want to do it or you need the
Working
money.
on one of those right now.
Yeah. Yeah, like there are ways to use different pseudonyms so that your identity isn't revealed on credit. So you can still do the work and make the money, but it doesn't have to be a part of your public brand.
Yeah. So I know that we're going to open it up to questions soon if anyone wants to kind of start thinking anything that they want to ask. But while you're doing that, I've got a couple more questions for you. I'm wondering, we have a lot of emerging talent here, people that might just be getting started or in the early stage of the career. What's one piece of advice that you'd give to someone that's kind of just starting out as a producer or songwriter or both?
Yeah. I mean, I think for songwriters and producers specifically, I hate to say it, but I think I'm also kind of a black and white thinker, so take this with a grain of salt, but I think you have to, if you're not living in LA or willing to move to LA, you have to be spending a significant amount of time here.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I mean, at least if you're wanting to be in like the, commercial songwriting space, this is just where it is. This is where it happens and where it feels like probably 90% of the people that are on, the
New
song.
York isn't dead, Maura.
I know. No, there's cool stuff happening there too, but I just think like you have to be in physical proximity to the community to some degree. Otherwise, I think it just becomes so much more challenging because it's like very much a relationship based industry, and so many opportunities come from like you are in with XYZ songwriter today and like you guys really hit it off and next week they're in with so like such and such artist and they invite you last minute because they loved what you do and your skill could lend itself to what this artist needs specifically. Like there's just things like that happen here naturally. Um, but if you can't do that, I would say just connecting with as many people who are working in the space that you want to be in musically. And that can be like DMing somebody. I think a lot of people are probably more open to receiving a cold outreach like that than you might think. But yeah, building your community. I would say I hate social media personally, not a fan, but I think that's super necessary. Like you need to have some sort of a social presence, even as a songwriter or producer, just to it's kind of like an online resume, I think, and it's a way that the community connects with each other. Um, and trying to think of what other.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, actually, because I know that always comes up of like people specifically. We're talking a lot about behind the scenes creators, right? Like these are producers, these are
Yeah.
songwriters, and not necessarily artists. Um,
Yeah.
and it comes up a lot of, do I need to be maintaining a social media profile, and like what type of outward facing branding do I need to be doing for myself in this behind the scenes role? What do you think about that? Like, what should that look like for a producer and a songwriter and online presence? How important is it?
Yeah, I mean, especially,
Is it 100% necessary?
I mean, no, it's not 100% necessary, but I think it adds so much value. I think, especially as you're building your career, you want to be easily accessible. And people are really busy. Like I know if I'm setting up a session, for example, and someone suggests adding a producer maybe that I've never heard of, I'm probably my first step is going to be going to Instagram, looking up their name, um, looking at the credits on their Instagram and maybe like who follows them, like what mutual friends do we have? Does this seem like someone who's like in a circle of trust to some degree within my circle or the greater community? And if I can't find that, I very likely just may move on to someone that I am familiar with because
Yeah.
it's just like it. it starts to take up too much time to like figure out who this person is. And
That's great to hear you say that because I always tell my clients where I'm like, You don't need to be doing like viral TikTok dances, but for someone
no, no,
who's
no.
doing A&R, like you want to be, you don't need to be shrouded in secrecy. Like if an A&R is being like, oh, I love this song, I wonder who wrote it. Like you want to make sure that your
Yeah.
name is coming up when that's being looked after. And I think it's also about like meeting the artists where they're at. And even as like managers and publishers, there's only so much we can do for our clients. And I think there's some
Yeah.
instances where just a creator connecting with the artist directly, like I know for me, one of my clients, like he worked with SZA because she reached out to him on Instagram. One of my
Yeah.
other clients worked with Claro because she reached out to him on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like I didn't facilitate those meetings. You're meeting the artists where they're at.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, those kinds of things happen all the time. I also think, I mean, you can go as ham or not on your socials as you want, but I think if I can go to a songwriter or producer's page and kind of pick up what their personality is like as well, that's very helpful context for me, especially if I'm putting that person in with an artist of mine, because, the personality match is also such a big component to whether the artist is going to be comfortable and want to do more days with you and stuff like that. So I think it's always tougher for me to feel super confident putting someone that I don't know personally in with an artist, or just like having a kind of gap in information as to kind of who they are as a person.
Totally.
So I think, yeah, the more like if that comes naturally to you, I would say that's something that would be beneficial and probably set someone apart. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, let's officially open it up to questions now. If anyone's got any questions for Maura, I know that it looks like we've got one in the log right there too, which someone after my own heart advocating for New York City. You're seeing these come in on the chat?
Yeah. Yeah. Are we just running through all of
Yeah,
these?
if you, I mean, you don't have to do all of them if there's one that stands out to you.
Yeah, let's see. About New York City. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm very black and white, and I'm an extremist thinker, but you can totally live in New York City.
I'll
You
say
can,
more than half of my clients live in New York City. So I'm
yeah,
going to go ahead and answer that question and say yes,
yeah.
emphatically yes.
Yeah. It is possible. More what I meant by that is just like the majority of the songwriting industry is in Los Angeles.
I
And
like what you said too, where it's a little bit genre dependent. Like I have a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
customers
that
that
too,
are
for sure.
very in the rock and roll scene or like are in different scenes specific to genres. So I will agree with you that I think if you are interested in writing top 40 pop music, that is very much not really the vibe in New York. And
Yeah.
I would totally agree with you that it's
Yeah, yeah,
important to
yeah.
be in Los Angeles.
Exactly. That's more so what I meant. And like for an artist, I think artists have a lot more flexibility, especially if they're able to write and produce by themselves, or like do a lot of that themselves. Um but yeah, for top 40 style music as a writer producer, I think you have to be spending time in
That's fair.
LA. Yeah.
That's
Uh,
We've got another question here that is, what's your most memorable experience working with an artist, producer, or songwriter, and what made it special for you?
Hmm. Um, that's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, I guess this is kind of a boring answer and probably quite obvious, but just like being a part of, there have been a few people that I've met really early on in their careers that I've been able to connect them with an artist or an opportunity that really ended up changing their lives in a big way. So, that's like probably obviously the ultimate goal across the board. So that always feels really good when you can achieve that.
Are you able to say specifically maybe one producer, songwriter, that an artist that you connected with that really popped off? Anything come to mind?
Um, yeah, I mean, there is, oh my gosh, this was so long ago that I'm gonna blank on his name, but, oh man,
It's
there
okay.
there's a songwriter who actually I think came from New York, and his name will come to me. I just ran into him the other day, but I set up a session for him. I think it was maybe like the first session I set up for him, and he wrote A-OK for Ty Verdes, if you guys know that song. And that was like a pretty big um streaming hit, and it like really catapulted his career. I know he got signed to his first publishing deal after that. I guess I can look at the credits to remember his name. I'm so bad.
As you do that, I'll
Adam
ask.
Friedman. Adam Friedman.
There
There.
you go. I'll ask one more question too. I know that you talked a little bit about when you're looking up new producers or songwriters that you're kind of specifically seeing the circle of trust and the vibes and the teams that they're working with and using that as a level of endorsement. What about for someone that might not be in the room with like some of these more obvious names and they're just getting started? Like, how do you are you still seeing those people? What do you recommend for people that maybe don't have that validation yet from some of the larger producers or songwriters?
Yeah, I mean it's tough, but you just have to stay consistent and just be patient. And I know that's not a fun answer, but I
I think
think
it's also like it's not necessarily like it's not like you're looking up a producer and being like, oh, does Benny Blanco follow you? Does Omer Fetty follow you? I feel like
yeah, no, no.
for me, it's a little bit more nuanced like that. Like I know, working with Claro, for example, she follows so many new and emerging artists. So like
Mm,
I'll look and be like, oh, Claro's onto this person. Like that's something. Or even
yeah,
someone more niche, just like a cool engineer or just a cool like music industry friend that I know
yeah.
where I'm like, oh, this person's onto them. Where it's not always like, oh, are you in the room with so and so producer? It's like,
Yeah. I mean, of course, like if you have, high caliber connections, like obviously that's attractive and helpful and great, but I think it's also about like just like what is the culture around you? Like what kind of pocket of music do you sit in, and is that relatable to whatever the opportunity is that I'm considering you for? Like, is it a creative fit is really
yeah.
what it's about.
Here's a good question. As a producer, is it okay to approach publishers and labels to try to access potential work, or is it better to reach out to the artist directly?
I mean, I don't think that it's bad to do any of those things. I just don't know that it's going to be the most effective method to like cold email managers or A&Rs, if you don't have like a direct rapport. I guess I would say if you're gonna do that, I would, because I get a lot of emails like this that are just very general, like, hey, I'm a songwriter who writes pop music. Here are my songs. Please check them out. Um, I think being very specific about what you want to get out of this relationship or this email. So like maybe I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but like if you're if you're reaching out to a label A&R, like instead of just generally reaching out and saying like, what artists do you have that I can work with? Here's my link. Maybe research what artists that specific person works with
Totally.
directly. Like find like
Do your homework. Yeah.
yeah, like pinpoint a person on their roster that's realistic, maybe someone more developing.
Can't you
And
always tell when you're receiving a mass email that someone's copy pasted
yeah.
and sent to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
dozens
yeah.
of
And so
A&Rs? Yeah,
yeah, so that I'm just gonna like file that away. But if someone's like clearly done their homework, they're putting thought behind it, like maybe you reach out and you say like I've noticed XYZ artist does like say something specific about their music and how what your skill like how your skill can specifically impact positively this person's music.
yeah.
And just make it very specific, and I would ask for one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably much more effective than just kind of blindly asking
Yeah.
people for help.
I think too, it's like going back to doing your homework. It's understanding if you want to work with a specific artist, it's understanding how they make music. So it's like, what do you think is the best in? Is it like for example, Chappell Roan, like obviously she collaborates with Dan Nigro a lot. So maybe trying to figure out a way to connect with Dan Nigro's team is a good in. Or maybe you're working with an artist that you know for a fact always records music at so and so studio. So it's like doing something with that studio where it's like doing the
Yeah.
research there to see what the best entry point is.
Yeah, exactly. I would say generally that's probably much more worth someone's time is trying to like you kind of have to be a detective and like figure out if you're trying to get to an artist like who is their like close circle
Yeah,
of people, like who do they trust and like how can I connect with one of those people, and like none of these things are going to happen immediately
yeah,
probably, but like the more of that kind of homework that you do and the more time you spend trying to connect with people in someone's circle, like that's eventually going to lead to something.
yeah. You said too that when you're doing A&R that and when you're saying like what's the right time for a publisher that you like to approach people. Is there anything anyone can do to make themselves more visible, and make themselves more likely to kind of grab your attention?
Um, I mean, I think like I do a lot of my A&R also by word of mouth. So I think it's kind I feel like I'm repeating myself, but just like building your community and your network, I think is the main thing for me. Like if
On
I
that too, just because we're running out of time and I want to actually specifically pinpoint that, because you're saying building a
yeah.
community in your network, what are ways that you recommend doing that maybe outside of specifically sessions? Like if someone's even just trying to get in the room for the session, like how can someone build that community and that network when they're
Yeah.
just getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, this kind of comes back to why I think, at least for the game, it's so important to be in LA because it's like you are out at shows, like maybe you meet someone's manager at a show or you meet another songwriter and you guys go out for drinks and it's just like the same way that you would like find new friends. It's essentially the
Yeah,
same thing, you know? It's like you just have to put yourself out there and through one person you'll meet other people if you're willing to, go to the cookout that that person invited you to or like whatever it
yeah,
may be. I think it's just like immersing yourself in as many different social settings as you can and then keeping up with it. Like you have to it takes a lot of time and effort to like keep relationships up. And you don't have to
yeah,
be best friends with every person or like talk to every person every single week. It's like
yeah,
but like being on like having someone's phone number and being able to text them or call them, I feel like that's like the level
yeah,
of closeness that you want to get to. And like however you get there, I think is fine. There's a lot of different ways to do it, um, but yeah.
All right, I think we've got time for one more question, and I really like this one, especially for you on the publishing side. How important is the size of someone's catalog when you're talking to them and considering signing them? Are you really looking for, it's like how important is size? I realize what I'm asking. Are you looking for someone that has a lot of credits, or is it more like value and like a couple of the songs that they've done? I've been in that position recently shopping a pub deal for a client where it's like
Mhm.
someone that literally had hundreds and hundreds of credits versus someone that
Mhm.
maybe had closer to like a dozen. Like, does that factor
Um,
into you?
yeah, no, the size I would say has nothing to do with it. I would say it's just it's definitely quality over quantity. Like I'm never gonna just like blank slate look at two things and be like, oh, one person has 20,000 songs coming into the
Yeah,
bill versus one person has five songs. Like it completely depends on what the songs are.
yeah,
And like that's more what it's about.
cool. Well, I think that that kind of gets us close to it. Nathan, what do you have anything else that any final words, Maura? Any last pieces of wisdom to throw out there?
Um, No, I mean, I think just one of the main takeaways um that I've found over my career is like you're gonna have lots of highs and lows, and there's gonna be a lot of eras where you feel like quitting, and it's gonna just be, really, really, really difficult. Like I've been through that an endless number of times, but I think the people who end up finding success in whatever capacity in this industry are people who um can just endure and want to. So I think what you should really focus on is creating a professional life that you enjoy very much on the day to day. And I think if you
I love
can,
that.
yeah, if you can enjoy just the
Enjoy
day-to-day
yourself.
process, like things will come in time, but you really have to be persistent and patient. And I think that only works well if you like love what you're doing and the way that you're doing it on a day-to-day basis.
I cannot think of a better way to wrap this up. Nathan, what about you?
I know that's like incredibly poignant. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maura. Thank you so much, Lisi, for joining us today. For everyone else out there, we have another one of these sessions coming up April 17th, I believe. There is more information on that on our website, and I will send out the RSVP link to everyone here for that as well. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming, and thank you again, Lisi and Maura, for your time.
Thanks,
Or
guys. Have a good weekend.
Have a great